Hi everyone, I'm here with our second topic lesson of the term. So it's Thursday the 25th. It's always like a quiz for me to get the date right, because obviously it's not Thursday the 25th right now for me. But anyway, let me share my screen, and we are continuing with our learning about what makes a good leader. So again, we're really focusing on this rights and responsibilities aspect of our theme this term, topic this term. So for today's lesson, you need your English book, obviously. You need colouring pencils because you're going to be doing some drawing, and you're going to need a pen, or well, mainly a pencil. But yeah, there you go. That's what you need. So our learning question today is, how can we be encouraged to follow rules? So last lesson we looked at why rules are important, and why we have rules, and these were some of the things we thought about. So to keep peace, to keep us safe, to make things fair, and to protect our rights. So we thought a lot about our rights last lesson, why rules are important for protecting those rights, and we thought about what our rights are. So things like having a safe place to live, having enough food to eat, and things like that. So let's jump in with today's learning then. So let's think, do we always follow rules? Sometimes we can break rules and it's not the end of the world. So if you're calling out in class, like, we'd probably talk to you about it, especially if you did it over and over again. You might miss some of your playtime. We're trying to teach you the difference between right and wrong, and to make sure that you're respectful of other people. And that was something that we talked a little bit about last lesson, was that rules that you have as children, and particularly at school or at clubs that you go to, they're usually going to be about being respectful and keeping you safe. So understanding that difference between what's right and what's wrong to be doing. So some rules, though, would have a more serious consequence. So obviously, if you there's lots of rules to follow when you're driving, and there's obvious things that you're not allowed to do. You know, you have to drive on the right side of the road and stuff like that. If you're driving in the wrong way, then obviously that's going to cause a lot of problems, and it's not safe. The rain is suddenly really loud. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's suddenly started hammering down here. Sorry, it's slightly distracting. Every time I make a video, I seem to be slightly distracted by something. I'll try to focus more. So obviously stealing, there's serious consequences to that, and it's not showing respect for people, is it? And then obviously with COVID and everything that's going on at the moment, there are lots of new rules to be following and lots of new guidance that's come about. And sometimes people might break those rules. They might have reasons to break those rules. So like wearing face masks is mandatory, which means that everyone should be doing it. But there are exceptions. And so sometimes it might be like for health reasons, you might not. You might see people not wearing a mask, and it's not up to us to question that, because they may well have a good reason why they are not wearing one. So there's lots of reasons why people might look like they're not following the rules in that sense. So why do we think people might break these rules? Well, sometimes, unfortunately, people do just break rules, but let's think about it really carefully. So because our topic is all about rights and responsibilities, so these words, rights and responsibilities, are going to come up a lot. So rules are there to protect people's rights. If people feel that their rights aren't being met by the rules, so if they feel that a rule is unfair in some way and that it means that their right is not being met, then they might break a rule. So think of a rule that people might break. If you don't have enough food to eat because you don't have enough money, then someone might decide that their only option is to steal food. And we know that that's not right, but they feel that perhaps they feel that, you know, they don't have enough food, they can't survive. So that's a basic human right, is that they can't survive without food, and therefore they've broken that rule. That doesn't mean that it's right to break a rule, of course, but we have to collect, we're trying to understand why this might happen, okay? So when people are making rules or laws, how can our leaders encourage people not to break them? Well, the rules need to be fair. They need to protect everybody's rights, and people need to have their voices heard. So with an example like I was just talking about, if someone was stealing because they couldn't afford food, then there are different things that are in place to try and support people in that situation. So we have food banks, or people might get support financially, so they might get money to help them out. So we create these rules, and then we try to create ways that we can support people in following these rules. But as I said before, unfortunately, sometimes people will break the rules, and it'll be for no obvious reason. So are these people thinking about how their actions affect other people? So you might see things in the newspaper sometimes where people might have done something and you think, well, why would you, like, that's not the right thing to be doing. And you have to question whether the people involved, were they thinking about the consequences? Were they thinking about other people? Or maybe they were just thinking about themselves more. And that can be a problem in society when we've got lots of people living together. It's really important that we have empathy and we do think about others. So when the Romans arrived in Britain, they wanted the Celts to be their slaves. And we can understand why the Celts rebelled against them, can't we? Because that's not fair. They didn't want to be the Roman slaves. So they felt that their voices weren't being heard. They weren't being shown respect. They weren't being treated fairly, and their rights weren't being protected. So there's many, many reasons why that was unfair. And of course, nowadays, you're not going to get like the next prime minister come in and say, you're all my slaves. That's just not going to happen. But in Roman Britain, obviously, we learned about that happening, and we learned about Boudicca leading the rebellion against that. So nowadays, and actually for a very long time, in fact, right back to Roman Britain, rules have been made in a similar way. So new laws are introduced only when they're passed through the Houses of Parliament and agreed by two groups of people that help to run the country. So we have the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Our MPs can put forward new laws, but as individuals, we can't. So sometimes we might think a law's a bit unfair because it's a law that's come about for whatever reason, but we've not personally been involved in deciding on that law. So the process is as fair as it can be when you have millions of people to look after. Because if we think currently, just in the UK, there are about 70 million people living. So that is a lot of people to look after and to make rules and laws for. So there will be times when a new law is introduced and some people won't like it because they've not had a say, or for whatever reason they just don't like it. So it's as fair as it can be. During Roman rule, there were a few ways that new laws could be made, and mostly they were made in a similar way to today, where they would have to be agreed by a group of people. However, it was also possible for the emperor alone to pass a new law. So if the emperor decided he wanted this law, he could just do that, and obviously that's going to create problems. So as citizens, we hope that our rights will be protected by the laws that are in place, and in return we have to be responsible for obeying the laws. So there's those two words again, rights and responsibilities. So your task today, that was a lot of me talking again, I'm sorry. Hopefully next week it will be less all about me waffling on. So your task is to draw a picture showing a new law being passed. So you could draw a picture of what you think it might look like in Parliament. You can even have a little, do a bit of research if you want. You could Google what it looks like. And your picture should show a group of MPs needing to agree on a law before it's passed, okay? So you could maybe have some speech bubbles going on, think about what the law could be as well. You can make that up, I don't mind. But then once you've drawn your picture, make sure you colour it in really nicely, make it really clear what's going on. And then you've got a challenge question to answer. So you'll need to write the answer to this underneath your picture maybe. And that's why is it difficult in society to always set rules that everyone thinks are fair? So think about these things that I've kind of talked you through this afternoon and think about why sometimes people might think that a rule is not fair. Okay, so that's your task for today. Again, sorry that that was a lot of me waffling on, and I will have some more topic for you next week. So see you soon.